Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to Daily's 2A News. Today we're going to talk about the worst gun control bill that I've ever seen introduced into Congress that would essentially ban pretty much all semi-automatic firearms, including some bolt action. So let's go ahead and talk about H.R. 5717. Okay, so H.R. 5717, this is easily one of the worst and most extensive gun control bills that I have ever seen. I mean, if you want to read this entire bill, you're going to have to close yourself off from everybody else, get a cup of coffee, sit on the couch, and pretty much block out an entire day because it's like reading all of the Harry Potter novels back to back. It's that long. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and read the titles of each one of the sections. That'll give you a basic understanding of what they're trying to accomplish here, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail. So let's go ahead and start off by reading the titles of each section, which gives you kind of an idea of what that section's about. You know what? Actually, let's do something else first. Since this bill is so bad, this bill is so all-encompassing, it would put so many people in line for prison, it would ban so many standard and commonly owned firearms, that let's go ahead and start off first by calling out the tyrants that are responsible for this. Because here we are in the middle of a national emergency, and here they are trying to push through gun control. So the people that we've put in charge to basically protect our safety are trying to strip us of our Second Amendment rights during a national emergency. So let's go ahead and call them out by name first, and then we'll get into the bill. So we start off with Mr. Johnson of Georgia for himself, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Quigley, Mr. Brown of Maryland, Mr. Morrell, Mr. Delarno, Mrs. Carolyn B. Maloney of New York, Mr. Keating, Mr. Lynch, Mr. Moulton, Miss Presley, Mrs. Trahan, Mr. McGovern, Mr. Danny K. Davis of Illinois, Mr. Neal, Miss Clark of Massachusetts, and Mr. Pascal. Those are the people that are in the House right now trying to take your Second Amendment rights away during an emergency, and that needs to be called out. Those people need to be absolutely removed. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Title 1, we have firearm licensing. Section 101, license to own a firearm and ammunition. That's right, you're going to need a license that's going to be need to be renewed every 10 years. So yes, you will need a license to purchase a firearm in the future if this passes. This also, Title 1 starts by talking about state firearm licensing as well. You have Title 2, background check reform, universal background checks, completion of background checks, and a 7-day waiting period, reporting of background check denials. So basically there's going to be a universal background checks, 7-day waiting period, and they also want to report all of the denials to Congress because Congress needs that information apparently. Title 3, firearms possession. 301, protecting victims of domestic violence, fugitives from justice, minimum age for purchasing firearms and ammunition. That's going to go along with the firearms licensing, so you have to meet a specific age and requirements in order to get that license. Secure gun storage by owners. So again, they're going to be instituting what they consider to be safe storage of your firearm, and this is going to be on a national level. And then gun-free school zones. They want to expand gun-free school zones, not only to just public schools, but they want to add language that would expand that to private schools and stuff like that. So Title 4, extreme risk protection orders. Extreme risk protection orders, grant program, so they want money to study things. Federal extreme risk protection orders, so basically making it national instead of just statewide. Federal firearms prohibition, so people that violate those risk protection orders are basically going to lose their Second Amendment rights. Identification records. We have conforming amendment, and then full faith and credit. So we have that. That's going to be Title 4. And this continues to go. I know this is going to get really boring for you guys, but again, I'm breaking this down. If you were to sit there, it would take hours upon hours to actually read this entire thing. So this is the breakdown. But we have Title 5, assault weapons and firearms, silencers, and mufflers ban. Give me a break. So Section 511 is just going to be the definitions. They have the restrictions on weapons and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. So essentially they want to ban, in this section, they want to ban most or almost all semi-automatic centerfire firearms. That includes pistols and long guns, shotguns, and things of that nature. So they want to ban those. There is a grandfather clause that they have in here, but essentially anything that requires a magazine and is semi-automatic is going to be banned under this bill. So the use of grants again, grants for buyback programs for assault weapons and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. So basically the government's going to be using the money that you already paid them to do these buybacks for something that they never owned in the first place. So again, I don't understand how you can buy it back, but they want your tax dollars to go to fund that. Ban on untraceable and undetectable firearms. So this is where they're going to be going after those 80%. They want to ban the 80% as well. So there's going to be a ban on those and a prohibition on possession of certain firearm accessories. So now they're going to be banning firearm accessories as well. Subtitle B is the firearm silencers and muffler ban, where they have restrictions on firearm silencers, which is basically going to be a ban on all silencers, suppressors, and so forth. And then talks about the penalties and the effective date for that, which I believe is going to be 1 year after the bill's passage. We have Section 6, which is firearm trafficking, prohibition against multiple firearm sales and purchases. So this is where you get into that whole firearms rationing thing. So like 1 gun a month and stuff like that, which California has implemented, which Virginia was looking at as well. Increased penalties for making knowingly false statements in connection with firearms. Retention of records. That's another one. So retention of records, that's so they can keep track of who's buying these things. And if you have to retain records on this stuff, they can easily pull up your name, and that is no good. So firearms trafficking. And then it goes on to Title 7. So we're still going here. This is all in one bill, mind you, if you're still watching, which I would commend you if you are, but wouldn't mind if you didn't because I know it's long. But gun shop security measures, inspections, employee background check, gun store thefts, civil enforcement, no effect on state laws governing dealing in firearms, lost and stolen reporting requirements. So now they're going to give you a time limit, depending on how long you reported it, lost or stolen. Let's see, report on implementation, enhanced record keeping requirements. Again, National Registry, right? Deadline for issuance of final regulations, and then repeal. Now we're moving on to Title 8. Title 8 is repeal of the exclusion of pistols, revolvers, and other firearms from the consumer product safety laws. So you guys know how a lot of people from these recent tragedies have gone after firearms manufacturers for lawsuits, right? But they're protected because how do they know what somebody's going to do with it? And they simply sell it for its legal purpose, and then if somebody uses it illegally, people want them to be held liable for that, and they shouldn't be held liable for that because it's not their fault, right? But for some reason, they want to add all these different things to say that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and remove these, so you guys go ahead, have a good time, file as many lawsuits as you want, because that's what we need in our country right now. Increase the excise taxes relating to firearms. So excise taxes is also something that they recently did in California, where basically you have the price of something, then you have the sales tax, and then they add on another excise tax on top of that. So they increase the fees on something so that something that might cost you $200 is going to cost you $400 once you actually walk out the door. And then we have the last title here, which is Title 10, miscellaneous, and that is servability. I'm not sure exactly what that means because I didn't read Section 10, to be totally honest with you. So again, let's go ahead and talk about that now in more details, that you guys have an idea of what the titles are and so what each section of this bill actually covers. So let me go ahead and break this down now that we've read that as simply as possible. Basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to ban semi-automatic firearms, commonly owned firearms, pistols, shotguns, handguns, rifles, stuff like that. They're trying to ban anything that's basically semi-automatic. The language that is in this bill basically leaves open the door for anything that is essentially bolt action. But even on bolt actions, there's certain features that would throw it into the banned category. So they're considering handguards that are not part of a stock. So if you have a simple bolt action rifle, a simple hunting rifle, right? It's got the stock. The stock is actually part of the grip and part of the forend itself, and that helps you hold it and protects you from burning your hand. Well, they're considering anything that is even partially enclosed part of their ban. So they would call that a barrel straddle. That's one of the accessories that would essentially be banned. Now, as part of a hunting rifle, since it's part of the stock, that wouldn't be banned. However, there are bolt action rifles out there these days. Obviously, there's modern improvements. Things continue to get better. And so you have companies like MDT out there who are making these, chassis systems that have an independent stock. They have the chassis, and then they have a forend that would include a handguard, and it's a fully encompassing handguard that would protect you from the heat of that barrel, right? Still a bolt action, same as the one that has the stock that just, is one piece stock. But because the handguard is separate from the stock itself and not one piece, that bolt action would now be considered an assault weapon under this bill. So you can see that not only does it go after semi-automatics and all the stuff that we're used to trying to fight for, but it also goes after certain bolt action shotguns and things like that. Anything that would have something on there like that would essentially be banned. So we're talking about 10 round capacity, we're talking about anything with a magazine feeding device that it can accept anything higher than 10 rounds, belts and so forth. But they also threw in there anything that could be coupled together. So right now in California, a lot of people try and get around things, or not necessarily get around things, because you do have to remove the magazine and reinsert it, but still they try and get around things by taking two 10-round magazines, having a coupler in the center that would allow you to remove the magazine and put it back in. According to the vague language in this bill, those types of devices would also become illegal, because it would essentially help you load 10 more rounds much quicker. And so again, not only are they going after all these semi-automatics and even bolt actions and stuff like that, they're going after the magazines as well. But really, this bill just stops, to me. I mean, it's a bad bill altogether, but this bill stops, to me, in Title I. You don't have to read any further, because Title I implements licensing for firearms. So if you have a Second Amendment right, and that right requires a license, is it a right anymore, or is it a privilege? If the government has to grant you a license in order to use a right, it basically nullifies that right, and it now becomes a privilege, and that's exactly what's going on here. So to me, this bill is dead in Title I, which makes you get a license. That license has to be renewed in 10 years. It requires that you go through a background check. It requires that you be of a certain age. It requires a few different things. Obviously, you're going to have to pay a fee, right? But you have to show safe handling. You have to show that you know how to use it. You have to show all these different things before even picking up your firearm in order to get one of these licenses. So it is really just, to me, dead in the water. Title I, this thing's done. Now, like I said before, this is kind of an all-encompassing bill. So it is basically everything that we've been trying to fight against in one bill. They have red flag laws written into this. So they have what they're calling extreme risk protection orders. They want that to be on a national level. They want a national registry. I mean, you guys read that in the titles as well. They want a national registry. They want people to keep files, to keep documents for much longer. They want reporting done to Congress to know who's buying, who's selling, who's been denied, and so forth. They want to be able to keep track of people. That's a national registry. So you have gun bans, ammo bans, age restrictions, red flag laws, national registry, all of these types of things, including gun-free zones, which we all know is a huge mistake and just makes a soft target. But you have all of these rolled up into H.R. 5717. All of these things are wrapped up into one bill. Not to mention safe storage laws. So in California, they have safe storage laws. You have to keep everything locked up and separate and all this type of, all this stuff. And it has to, the storage unit that you're using to store your stuff has to be approved by the government. So it can't just be any type of storage that you want to keep something in. It has to be approved storage by the California government. And again, this bill wants to put that on a national level so that you would actually have to spend more money and buy things to keep things in. And those storage containers that you would keep them in have to be approved by the federal government. So it is all encompassing and the worst bill that I have probably ever seen. On a national level, this just would not fly. This would be the end of things, okay? I know you hear the word tyrant being thrown around a lot, but essentially that's what these people are who are trying to pass this. They're tyrants. They want the government to have all the control and the people to have none. What's interesting about this bill is that it has space written in there for the government. So it basically says this is not going to apply to the federal government. It's not going to apply to state government. It's not going to apply to law enforcement. Basically, all these people that work for the government are going to be excluded from any of the legislation that's in this bill. So all of this stuff is going to be excluded to them. And interestingly enough, it even exempts previous law enforcement. So retired law enforcement is going to be excluded as well. So this is definitely one of those bills where you need to start bugging people. And I mean bugging people big time. You need to make phone calls. You need to write letters. You need to email. You need to join the groups that are going to be fighting against this type of stuff. So Gun Owners of America, the Firearms Policy Coalition, which I'll link down below. All these people are going to have to fight against this should something like this actually go through. But we need to get in there with our preemptive measures and let them know, if you want to stay in office, which I don't suggest that they do anyway because they are clearly tyrants, but if you want to stay in office, you're not going to pass this stuff. I don't want it to go past the House. I want it to be voted down in the House and be done with it. And let these people know that the American people are not going to stand for it. Especially in this day and age with what's happening right now across the country and across the world. This is what you're focusing on. This is what you're putting your time towards. You know, how dare you? There are people out there that are hurting right now, and they need the support of the federal government, not the federal government to come in and simply strip their rights away. That's what you guys are doing. You guys are the lowest of low, the dirtiest of dirt, and you need to be taken out of office. Anyway, I want to thank you guys very much for watching. Again, if you guys want to read this, I will link this bill down below so you can read it for yourself, but it is just tyranny incarnate. So go ahead and check it out if you have about 8 or 9 hours of your time. Thank you all again very much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and the little bell notification that's next to it. Have a great day.